Welcome to Downtown Sports. My name is Downtown Stephen Brown, and in today's video, the NHL has unofficially announced what the salary cap will be for next season. So let's take a look at how this could affect our Toronto Maple Leafs. And if you've been following along with the channel for the last little while, you'll know that I've made a couple of these videos already with more projections and stuff. But as we've gotten more concrete information like player signings and whatnot, or news like this, I've updated it along the way. But more or less, the things in these videos are projections, right? They're subject to change, but I try to be conservative with them, and I try to use historical comps to get those projections. Like in the previous video, to project the salary cap, because I was working with an $83.5 million salary cap, I went back and looked at the percentage increased year to year ever since the salary cap has been in existence. So if these projections end up holding up, the NHL salary cap could be increasing on the low end from 3% to the high end of 8.2%. But let's be real, it's more than likely going to be closer to 84 than it is 88. Because I believe last year the salary cap was projected from anywhere between what it is right now and $84 million, and it ended up being the very bottom end of that projection. But before we get to our armchair GM and we get into specifics with contract comparables and breakdowns and whatnot and showing the actual dollar amounts, we need to take care of a couple more house cleaning stuff. We need to understand that next season, the league minimum salary is going to be $700,000. And that's going to be very important for the Maple Leafs and other cap-strapped teams because you need to be able to fill out your roster with guys making league min. But now that we got that out of the way, I'm going to pull up the armchair GM in a second, and there's going to be a couple of variations to this because there's a couple of different moves that the Maple Leafs could look to make in the offseason that would change the way that their salary cap makeup would look like. But the whole point of these videos aren't to be perfect, right? The Maple Leafs have a couple of moves that they could make, a couple of different variations of what their cap situation could look like going into next year. And I'm going to show them, but I'm also not going to pretend like everything that I'm saying here in this video is gospel. I make mistakes, right? I know my fair share of information and what tools to use and what comparisons to make and whatnot. But at the end of the day, I'm just some schmuck on camera, on YouTube. But if some schmuck can figure out how to get it 95% of the way there, then a paid professional like Kyle Dubas can figure out how to get that extra 5%. So here it is in all of its glory, and don't worry, I'm going to go through some of the projections that I've made, and I'm going to explain some different variations and some moves that the Maple Leafs can look to make and what they can afford. Now, the first thing on here that probably catches your eye is Travis Dermott for $2.5 million. Now, at the beginning of the season, Travis Dermott was kind of a candidate to maybe receive a long-term contract at the end of this year, but it's become more clear that the Maple Leafs' best option is to offer him a bridge deal. So that is $2.5 million for 2 seasons. And when you're looking at Travis Dermott, you really have to consider a range here because $2.25 million is also acceptable when you're comparing him to the players on this list here. $2.25 to maybe $2.75 million on the high end would be a fair deal for Travis Dermott on a 2, maybe even 3-year contract. But the Toronto Maple Leafs could also have some other plans for Travis Dermott that I will get into a little bit later in the video. Now, next up is Ilya Mikheyev, and Ilya Mikheyev is actually set to return before the end of this year. He's going to be playing in the playoffs when the Maple Leafs are there. So that's definitely the projection that I'm not the most confident in, but I am confident in Kyle Dubas' relationship with Ilya Mikheyev and Dan Milstein, his agent. Because it was reported that when Ilya Mikheyev first suffered the injury, the laceration to his wrist via the skate against the New Jersey Devils, that Kyle Dubas went to the hospital and spent a lot of time with him. They watched some soccer, they chatted and stuff like that. So there's definitely that type of working relationship there. But if you look at his overall game, he doesn't have the best shot. He's not the greatest playmaker, but he is a really heavy skater. He's really tough on the puck, and he's a skater that the Maple Leafs could definitely use in their lineup right now and definitely for next season. And next up is Jason Spezza, and this was tossed around a little while ago, but it was reported by Chris Johnson on the radio that it's more than likely Toronto or bust for Jason Spezza, and that money's not a priority. Now, the Maple Leafs might throw him a little bit of a bone, and they might give him a little bit more than league minimum, but it's going to be in and around that range and definitely under $1 million. And that's pretty much it. There's not too much work to do in terms of re-signing players. I think the Maple Leafs have the second most contracts signed already for next season in the entire NHL. The last guy that I have thrown in there is just Guy, and he's just a placeholder from someone that the Maple Leafs could look to sign in free agency, similar to a Jason Spezza for league minimum. Now, on to some more fun stuff, because I think it would be a little bit disappointing if the Maple Leafs went into next season with a lineup like this. So let's look at some trades that they could possibly make. Travis Dermott is an interesting player because he hasn't really developed since his first NHL season. He's kind of been stagnated in that he's a really good skater. He's kind of a jerk sometimes, but he hasn't really developed much of his playmaking game, hasn't really developed a shot. He doesn't really kill penalties very often, if at all, and he's definitely not playing on the power play. He hasn't really shown that he could be a viable top 4 option for the Toronto Maple Leafs thus far, and maybe that could change by the end of this year. But when you're looking at these 6 defensemen, these are the 6 defensemen that are going to be in the mix for the team next season. And if you want to add someone to this mix, you need to subtract someone from it. Timothy Liljegren could also be a trade candidate, but when you're looking at the salaries and the type of player that the Maple Leafs would need to add to really make a tangible upgrade to this defense, you need to move out some money. So that's why I'm moving Travis Dermott instead of Timothy Liljegren, because you're going to see the cap space go up in the corner there. Now, another guy that kind of looks out of place in this lineup is Andreas Johnsson. Now, it's been rumored all season long that the Toronto Maple Leafs have been looking to move one of Johnsson, Kapanen, or Kerfoot. And when you're looking at the 3 of them, Kasperi Kapanen has a standout skill in his skating ability, and he plays the penalty kill. Alexander Kerfoot has the ability to play center, and Andreas Johnsson doesn't. He's the least versatile of the 3, so if I'm the Maple Leafs, I'm looking to trade him and not the other 2. And I just moved them onto LTIR to subtract their cap hit so that you can see how much money the Maple Leafs would have to work with after the trade. And I do believe that a package consisting of Travis Dermott and Andreas Johnsson and maybe a little bit of a sweetener added on top could get you that defenseman that you want to finally play with Morgan Rielly. And in and around $6 million is a healthy amount of money to go out there and get someone that would be impactful enough. Now, another interesting option would be to have Nick Robertson on this team. Now, I talked about him at length in a video already, and I will link that on the screen, but I explained why his age puts him in a very unique situation to possibly make the Maple Leafs next season, or at least get a 9-game tryout with them. He's been a really versatile player for the Peterborough Petes, and I know it's the NHL, and I know it's a different level, but seriously, check out that video. That guy is absolutely insane. He's played on the penalty kill in junior. He's played on the power play. He's been a force 5-on-5. He takes a ridiculous amount of shots. He's a really excellent playmaker. Look out for Nick Robertson next year. But again, the whole point of these videos are just to provide some perspective of how the numbers work with building an actual team, because when you're looking at just the regular cap friendly page, yeah, you can see how many forwards and how many defensemen they have on the team, but it's a little bit harder to kind of visualize it in the sense of first line, second line, third line, and then the D pairings. The Toronto Maple Leafs are very much not in cap hell, like I just showed throughout this entire video, and that's also another point to these videos, because a lot of people want to blow things out of proportion and whatnot, and when you take a look at it like this, sorry, there's not much of a controversy there. Like I already showed, the Maple Leafs could have over $6 million to go out there and get that said defenseman, and maybe even more if the salary cap increases beyond the lower end of that projection. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments section, and if you guys want to make your own armchair GMs and send them to me and ask me what I think of them, or maybe even to feature them in a video, because I do review armchair GMs on Cap Friendly from time to time as a little bit of a joke. It's the series where I don't provide the content, and hopefully you don't provide the content, other people do. But if you guys want to provide the content for it and you want my opinions on stuff like that, I'd be more than happy to do a video where you guys submitted that stuff in. So make sure to leave me a like on this video if you did like it, and subscribe for more. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, why not subscribe? And just remember that the Toronto Maple Leafs are not only going to make the playoffs this year, we've already spoken that into existence, but they're also going to beat both the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Boston Bruins.